Boxing on TYT Sports. There's one good way to get Canelo Alvarez in the ring with Gennady Golovkin. Threaten to take away his championship belt. Look, some people don't respond kindly to threats. One of those ways is going to be Canelo Alvarez, because this is going to cause a little bit of a problem in the boxing world. But problems in the boxing world don't ever happen, right, Francis?
There's a major problem with the boxing world.
No.
They shouldn't be even questioning anything if they want to make sure that they stay on par with that other little sport. Oh yeah, what's it called? The UFC, where basically everyone's just trying to fight everyone, unless you're Conor McGregor and you like to try and pull the strings.
True. But
they shouldn't be asking questions. I think that's the first point I'm going to make.
Yeah, and so, look, Canelo Alvarez seems to not want to fight Gennady Golovkin. He also feels that he doesn't really need to fight Gennady Golovkin. His track record, obviously, is standing with its own. Most recently, one of those standout fights, only Miguel Cotto, another Hall of Famer in the boxing world, that he beat, and many people didn't think that he was going to beat Miguel Cotto if it went the distance, but he did. And that's what's important about it. So I'm not sure if the boxing organizations really have the wherewithal to really be threatening Canelo Alvarez. But here's the thing. Although the threat is a little unfair, any fan of boxing knows that Golovkin versus Alvarez is the best fight that is possibly available to the fans. Everything else, even to the hardcore boxing community, is not as embracing, not as captivating as those two stepping in the ring. Gennady Golovkin just did over 1 million pay-per-view buys. He just did. And Dominic Wade, that was a 2-round fight that included, I think, 300 knockdowns. Obviously, that's an exaggeration, but it wasn't even close. And Golovkin is, pound for pound, right now, the #1 fighter in the world. It's not even a question with Golovkin. His power, his footwork, everything with it. I was talking with Britton Harden a couple days ago, and he just said, when it comes to Golovkin's his pure power, we don't see it that often. So we need to capitalize on the best fights available and as many fights as possible, because you don't want to see him tire out, but you need to see him in the ring as much to keep him relevant, right? And for Canelo's sake, I get why you wouldn't want to fight Gennady Golovkin, but come on, this is a fight that we need to see. This would do over 1.5 million pay-per-view buys, and this will keep boxing a little bit more relevant for just a little bit more time.
But the same thing is, he's still not even, it's hard to kind of place that decision on Canelo when he's got a fight coming up that he needs to focus on. He's fighting Amir Khan. So it comes down to, what happens if he loses to Amir Khan? Is Amir Khan next in line for Gennady Golovkin?
To me, it wouldn't be. It should still be Canelo, because it's a better fight.
But again,
somehow.
yeah, and I think that is a needed fight in terms of the reputation of boxing and what they need to continue to remain a prominent sport. And I think it will remain a prominent sport. I'm not saying boxing's dying, because I know that is a go-to. But in terms of the money that's brought in compared to other directly competitive sports, is not as significant. Why? Because I don't think they have enough fierce rivalries. Now, if Gennady Golovkin was to come out and start calling out Canelo, I would understand. If Gennady Golovkin was to be like, oh, I want to fight Canelo because blah, 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 and Canelo's like, well, I want to take on Gennady Golovkin, but I don't want to run that risk. Well, that's going to I think it's going to let down a lot of fans, and it's going to let down what keeps the sport prominent and what's going to keep it relevant. When I always talk to Jason about boxing and why I still remain infatuated with boxing, it's because British boxing has still that loyal, almost football following like support. You hear the chants, you hear the atmosphere. The fact that Amir Khan hasn't fought Kell Brook yet is disastrous to me. Those two need to fight each other. We'll see what happens with Amir Khan and Canelo Alvarez, but every UK fan wants to see them fight. The same way that I'm just counting the days until Tyson Fury either loses or beats Klitschko. I could not care. I don't want to see him fight him. I want to see him fight Anthony Joshua, because it's that British battle between them both.
I want to see Tyson Fury in more press conferences.
Of course.
If you take a look here,
you can't beat a fat man.
In this press conference ahead of the Klitschko fight, he takes off his shirt and he goes, "You can't beat a fat man."
I'll have to show you what This is the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. There you go. Nothing like a fight for Floyd. Really not. No, have a look. That's it. Shame on you, man. Shame on you. Should that fat man beat you?
Awesome. So, I mean, British boxing definitely has at least some controversy, some fun trash talking going on, at least
for passion.
More
than anything.
I mean, Golovkin versus Canelo isn't even considered American boxing. It's pride of Mexico and the pride of Kazakhstan.
Yeah, but again, it's not even that. I just think it's because often they fight over here, and a lot of the times it's fought in the United States, and it drags that audience. But I do think that is a big factor to it. There is that sense of pride that goes along with Amir Khan fighting Kell Brook, or Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, or even when you had David Haye and he was in his fighting days. There's always British boxing. I don't think is going to I've faced as much adversity with the UFC's growth as much as I would think America, because it grows right here. Well, that's where the UFC's grown. That's where it's going into Madison Square Garden and everything else.
The UFC, it's interesting because they still don't do as many pay-per-view buys as boxing historically has done. Mayweather-Pacquiao, the numbers that got, even though the fight was not exactly the most entertaining, UFC is going to be a long way from ever touching those kind of numbers. And I look at it, even UFC 200 is going to give it a good run for its money, but it's amazing that boxing still has that ability, even with really no fight. Maybe Floyd was right, Floyd Mayweather, in saying boxing's nothing without him. Because the drop-off, the controversy, the press conf, everything that's going into it, not as fun.
And it's more than I think than just the pay-per-views. It's the audience that you drag out to these events, and that's where I make the argument counter to you is like the audience that Conor McGregor drags to a UFC fight is different than a standard audience.
They're so separate. Like, I think most boxing fans and UFC fans are. It's like
no, I'm seeing Conor McGregor drag the audience that he drags to a UFC fight is different than just a UFC audience in general. That's the type of following that sells crowds. That's the type of following that's going to fill seats and drag the sport to the position that has to be. And that's a similar following that I think goes to the UK boxing fights, because there is that sense of pride towards one individual fighter that people often draw themselves to. You immediately like a Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua, whereas I think that you'll get that similar crowd if you happen to have a big name like Canelo, who's a pride of Mexico. He's got a huge Mexican following, fighting someone like Gennady Golovkin, who's got a huge following as well. It's dragging those two in with a passion. When you see those two fight, you got a sense of it when Canelo fought Cotto. Again, it was a Puerto Rican superstar against a Mexican superstar, and it had a lot of passion to it, and it had a lot of viewership. But I think there's something mouth-watering about Gennady Golovkin, who just trucks everything in his way, fighting the pride of Mexico, and it's a style of fighting. That the style of those two fighting each other.
It's the closest to the throwback of knockout fighters and the knockout power. Well, Canelo's got knockout power. I always mention James Kirkland's fight.
And he's fearless.
Yeah, he is fearless. All right, comment below with what you think about Canelo versus Golovkin, why it should happen, why it needs to happen. Does it even need to happen? That's up to you guys in the comment section down below. Like, favorite, subscribe to the video. It goes a long way. We'll see you next time.